When I started back my career in business schools back in 1981 at the State University of New York at Binghamton, it seemed to me that the work that we were doing in organizational behavior was, how to say it, tolerated in terms of being included in the business school. In many ways, business schools were seen as focusing on finance and strategy and marketing, and people usually came way downstream, if at all. Well, here we are in 2023, and I'm really excited to talk to you about the research that we just completed and published in this journal. It's entitled, Do Employee Views Matter in Corporate Governance? The Relationship Between Employee Approval and CEO Dismissal. Now, this study really focuses on, does the employee's evaluation that we were able to collect of CEOs from Glassdoor.com, and that's one of the popular social media sites that people use for job searches, as well as for researchers looking at how employee assessments of the firm, its leadership, its culture, and the CEO matter. So we're going to talk about what we found in terms of how these evaluations collected on Glassdoor.com impact, for example, analysts' decisions in terms of whether to buy, strong buy, or not buy a particular firm. So let's get into the study. It's really interesting. The background was trying to take a look at what are the factors beyond the traditional ones that we typically look at, like financial metrics, what's happening in the industry, and so forth, competition. We wanted to see to what extent employee evaluations of their CEO would matter to what is perhaps one of the most consequential decisions that are made by the board of directors of any firm, and that is to retain or dismiss a CEO. So we looked at Glassdoor.com data going back to 2007, and we settled on an 8-year period or so between 2010 and 2018 to look at a series of firms that we could collect data not only on the CEO's assessment by employees, but also other firm metrics in terms of their performance. We examined this consequential decision by linking the employee evaluations to the decision of making an involuntary dismissal of the CEO. So that was really the purpose of what we were trying to accomplish, and a little bit on the data. Let me go into some more specifics. We collected data from 338 firms over the period of 2010 to 2018. And what we were looking at was whether the stakeholders, employees being key stakeholders, and based on stakeholder theory, very popular in the strategy literature, what would their impact be in terms of exhibiting their sentiment about the CEO? Now, we also reasoned that the employees are important to the firm's performance in that they're the ones, if committed to the strategy, are the ones that are going to help get it done. So they need to be committed, and if they're not engaged with the organization, or they may not see the CEO favorably, to what extent is that going to have on their choice to perform or not to perform? We hypothesized that employee evaluations are more valuable to boards making retention decisions when the firm actually performs well in terms of analyst recommendations and metrics, as opposed to when it performs poorly. We also will get into the power the CEO has in terms of whether they're the chair of the board, how many people are on the board who are members that were chosen by the CEO. But keep in mind, so we're going to look at to what extent, if the performance is good, then what impact do the employee evaluations have versus if it's poor. Now, here's the thing. If it's poor, the board already has information on whether to make a decision or not, particularly if it's a pattern of underperforming. They may have to dismiss the CEO. If it's good and the employee's sentiment is not positive, then that might be a red flag that boards would look at and consider in terms of whether to dismiss or not. The other part of it is if the CEO holds power, will the board actually make that decision, given that that CEO may have key stakeholders on the board that might not vote in that favor? So we evaluated firm performance, such as strong buy, underperform, and sell, based on analyst evaluations, return on assets, and a number of other financial metrics. And we looked at to what extent under favorable performance as well as unfavorable relative to the industry that these firms operated in, are boards likely to make a dismissal decision, and to what extent employees' perceptions, evaluations, sentiment impact that. What we have found is that employee evaluations indeed contributed to CEO involuntary dismissal. Here's the key: above and beyond firm performance, even putting in numerous controls to control for indigeneity and other factors that might impact the way we interpret our results, such as firm size, CEO age, gender, board size, industry dynamism, and so forth. So employee views matter above and beyond these other metrics. That's important. And they matter when performance is actually well, and they matter more if the board power is not as vested in the CEO. So what does this mean in terms of overall research and the implications that we're finding? How can we use this and how for application and also for research? You know, we don't know whether the specific evaluations made by these employees actually did impact the board's decision. It may have, and it seems like it has. And in fact, we interviewed 20 other firm boards, many of them publicly traded companies. And it was interesting. What we found was most boards actually get presentations, oftentimes by the human resources senior leader, on the evaluations through various social media sites like Glassdoor.com. So it appears that they're getting the information, and it appears they're also discussing that information. And some went so far as to say, yes, it certainly is factored into our decision on whether to retain or dismiss a CEO. In this study, we also felt linking strategy to leadership, decision-making, analyst-making evaluations, and finance is something we should do in business schools. So back in 1981, when I first started, we really taught in silos. The finance faculty rarely related to the work we were doing, vice versa. We didn't relate to the work that finance is doing. Well, all these things matter together, and we're hoping that this study, among others published in this journal as well as other journals doing research like this, signal how important this is, that we look at not only the traditional financial metrics, but also looking at the key employee stakeholder sentiment evaluations of their CEO. That's it for this study.